What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. You are the Super Bowl 54 champions, and the 2019-2020 season is already over. I'm taking a look ahead at the 2020 NFL season. These are my way too early NFL power rankings for the 2020-2021 NFL season, my tier rankings for every team in the NFL. Before I let you know where your team stands for me after Super Bowl 54, make sure you do Gronk Spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and of course, comment your opinion. Where do you see your team going into next season or after this Super Bowl? Do you like the prospect of the future, or do you think they might be on the downturn this next upcoming season? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, so with that being said, let's get into the tier list. My tier list for the 2020 NFL season, or my post Super Bowl 54 power rankings. So for the tier list, I have 5 different tiers. I have the contender tier, the playoff team tier, the playoff potential tier, the on the rise tier, and the trash tier. Trash is basically bottom of the barrel, worst teams in football. On the rise are younger teams that I feel could be pretty good this year, but I don't feel like they're quite in that playoff competition stage. Then we have the playoff potential teams that I feel like if a few things go in their direction, they could make the playoffs. The playoff team tier is, I feel like right now they are a playoff team going into next season. And then the contender tier are the teams that I feel like will be competing this time next year, rather in the Super Bowl or in the AFC Championship, the divisional round. Those teams are the contenders of the NFL. So with that being said, let's get into the tier list. The trash will have 6 teams. The on the rise and playoff potential will have 7 teams, and then playoff team and contender tiers will also have 6 teams, making up the 12 that would make the playoffs. All right, so let's start off with the Tennessee Titans, and I'm doing this straight off the noggin. I don't have any previous study information, or I don't even know what teams are going to end up in what tiers, so I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Starting off with the Titans, and I am going to put the Titans right now, at this moment. They just made the AFC Championship, so I can't give them recency bias. I got to look ahead and see what I think they're going to be next year. And with the Titans, I feel like they're a team that could be in this range. They're kind of in between. Okay, maybe they're a playoff team, maybe they're a playoff potential team. I'm going to put them in the playoff potential category. And the reason is, I don't know if this was a fluke this season or not. I think the Titans have a very good foundation in terms of their head coach, Mike Vrabel. I do think they have some talented football players and some young talented football players with Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and a few guys on defense as well. But I also see that part of their roster is a little bit older, specifically on the offensive line and on the defense. I could see them taking a slight decline next year. I do not think they'll be in the AFC Championship next year at this moment in time. And they still have a major question with signing Ryan Tannehill and whether or not Ryan Tannehill is going to play like he did last year, or if he's going to kind of regress to the days that he had in Miami. So the Titans have many questions. Too many for me to say that they're a playoff team at this point in time. But if they make the right moves in the offseason, I think they could definitely be back at the top of the AFC South and in the playoffs next year. The Miami Dolphins. Now, the Miami Dolphins have a lot of questions because they have a big draft coming up. They obviously got rid of a lot of the core that's been a part of this team for the last few seasons. So, Brian Flores has a lot of moves to make. And this is a massive offseason for the future of their franchise. Right now, I'm still putting them in the trash category as they were last season. Now, they did shock some people. Some people thought they would be as bad as 0-16. And with the roster they had, I don't blame them. But Brian Flores was able to get the most out of this talent. This season, I still feel like they're going to be at the bottom of the AFC East, specifically with Sam Darnold playing more for the Jets, the Bills being on the rise, and the Patriots are still a part of this division. So when I look at it, I still feel like the Dolphins are one of the worst teams in the AFC and the worst team in their own division. the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Cleveland Browns are one of the most head-scratching teams in the entire NFL. Whether it's the whole Odell situation, they have a new coach. You know, they got rid of Freddie Kitchens, which I think was a great move. Baker Mayfield, I think, will improve this season. He had a sophomore slump last year. They still have Jarvis Landry. They have Nick Chubb, one of the best backs in the league. They need to improve their offensive line. I think they could improve areas of their defense, and I could see them being a playoff team, but I'm going to put them in the playoff potential category because I think they have the potential. It's obviously there. They have some talent, but I don't know if they're fully ready to put it together because I just don't know if I'm 100% on the Baker bandwagon, and I don't know if this coaching improvement was as big as some people think it is. Sarkisian's okay, but I would have preferred maybe a different coach, a different direction for this team. The Jacksonville Jags. I actually don't like the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I liked it a few seasons ago. I thought they had a really bright future, and I also don't mind Gardner Minshew as a young quarterback. I think he has some potential to be a decent quarterback in the league, and they do have some talent on offense and some talent on defense. But I hate their coach from a football perspective. I don't really love they really need to revamp their entire defensive scheme. Losing Jalen Ramsey, a player like that, of that caliber, is absolutely massive. Guys like Calais Campbell are getting older, and there's been a lot of turnover on this roster the last couple of seasons. I really don't like some of their cap players that are very high in their cap. I think they need to revamp this entire team. They need a new culture in Jacksonville. And I'm just really not feeling the future of this franchise. So I'm going with the trash category. I think the Jags are clearly going in the worst direction of all the AFC South. And for me, they're at the bottom of this division. The Detroit Lions. The Lions are a team that I'm going to be making a video very soon about. I really think they have some promise going into next year. I thought they had promise going into this year. It just so happened that Matt Stafford got injured, and of course, they had a really difficult division. But I do feel like their division is about to soften up a little bit, and I also think that this team is ready to make a big move in the offseason. I feel like this team is ready to finally buy in to this entire Matt Patricia regime. I know a lot of people don't like Matt Patricia, and that's totally fine. But I think this is the season for them to make some magic happen. And I do feel like they have some talent on offense. I really like the way they were playing with Matt Stafford at the beginning of the year. I do think they still need to add a few pieces to their defense. We'll see what they do here. But I think they're in the playoff potential category. I think they're alongside Tennessee and Cleveland as teams I could see making the playoffs next year. I think some things in the offseason need to fall their direction for them to make it. But I actually do have some hope for the Lions next year. The Minnesota Vikings, this is a team that I really don't want to be having to put on this list yet because I really don't know if they're a playoff team or if they're just a playoff potential team. I think that they're kind of on the edge of maybe missing the playoffs next year. They still have a ton of talent. I'm really not sure they have much to sign in the offseason. I think they do have one more year of Kirk Cousins, one more year of making this thing happen. I love Danielle Hunter at the defensive end position. I really like, Eric Kendricks at linebacker, Harrison Smith at safety. They really need to revamp their entire cornerback group. But they have Adam Thielen, they have Stephon Diggs for the foreseeable future. They still have Dalvin Cook. So looking at all that, I feel like there's still a team that has the talent, and they do have Zimmer as the coach to be in that playoff team conversation. So I'm going to say there's still a playoff team. I don't really know how the rest of the teams are going to shape up, so maybe I'll move them at the end of this video. But I think I'm going to stay with Minnesota in that playoff team conversation because they still have so much talent, and they're still one of the more talented rosters in the league. Tampa Bay Bucs. Now, the Bucs, I think, made the most of what they could potentially make of this season. I thought their secondary was awful, their pass rush was phenomenal, and their front seven played very well versus the run. I thought they were a shock in terms of their front seven last year. But their offense, extremely explosive, but also extremely risky. I do like Bruce Arians. I'll give him the credit. He always finds a way to get the most out of his talent, specifically offensively. Mike Evans is there. Godwin is there. They have the receivers. They have the tight ends even. We'll see if they move on from O.J. Howard and try and get something out of that because they really don't utilize him correctly. They could add to their secondary. They could add a running back. They could add to their offensive line. We'll see what they do at quarterback. I think the Tampa Bay Bucs have playoff potential. I think they're a team that if they re-sign Jameis, they add to their secondary, they add a running back, I think they're a team with the cap to do so. I think they could bring back Jameis on a potentially cheap contract, and I think they could make it work because I think while Jameis is a risky quarterback, he's a guy that's going to throw a lot of interceptions. He also throws for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, and he's going to win you some games straight up because he has that sort of talent. He's also going to lose you some games. But if you bring in a better secondary and a better running game to counteract Jameis Winston, I think you could definitely be in that playoff potential conversation. So I'm going to say that Tampa Bay has what it takes, and they have the coach to make it happen. San Francisco to me was just in the Super Bowl. They probably could have won that Super Bowl. I'm going to say that they're still a contender. I know that there's the whole, playoff Super Bowl hangover sort of thing hanging over the head of Kyle Shanahan and this entire roster. But when you really look at it, San Francisco arguably has the most talented roster in not only the NFC, but the entire NFL. They still have a solid quarterback, although I wouldn't say Jimmy G is great. They still have a really, really good unit on defense that I still feel like they could add a piece or two there in the secondary potentially, or, maybe a little bit of depth. We'll have to see what they have to do there. Offensively, I think their receiving core could maybe add a player. They're probably going to lose Emmanuel Sanders, but maybe they bring in a younger guy. They really didn't have, Trent Taylor, some of these guys on offense that they could have used. Jerick McKinnon potentially. I don't know what's going on with him. So I do think that they're going to be around the same sort of team. I don't know if they're going to make the Super Bowl, but I do feel like they're going to be a team that's in the conversation to win it all next year, especially with Kyle Shanahan. Still a huge Kyle Shanahan fan, and I will not blame him for that Super Bowl loss. The Atlanta Falcons, speaking of Kyle Shanahan, his old team, his former team, Atlanta's interesting because I really don't like Dan Quinn at this point. I think they should have moved on from him. I don't know. I think he's an average head coach at best. I think Matt Ryan is still a solid quarterback. I still feel like Julio Jones is at the top of his game. I really like Calvin Ridley. I think Devontae Freeman is declining. Offensive line should be better next year with the rookies getting better and moving into their second season. Defense should be better as well, as it was better at the end of the season. And they're getting rid of Vic Beasley, which I actually think is a good move. I think some Atlanta fans overrate his skill set. I think Atlanta could make some moves on defense to be a better team. But I also feel like there's not a huge ceiling for this team. I feel like there's somewhere between that. Maybe they slip into the playoffs. Maybe they just miss it. I think they're in that playoff potential category, just like they were last year. And I don't really see them getting drastically better. I don't think they have really the coach or the coordinators to make it happen. So I'm going to put Atlanta in that middle of the league. Maybe they make it, maybe they don't make it category. Baltimore Ravens, they are clearly a contender. They're the number one team in the AFC. They're the best team in the league for most of the season. And Lamar Jackson was an absolute nightmare for defenses to defend. Now they have the secondary that will be intact going into next season. They need to add a pass rusher. They maybe need to add, a receiver in the offseason. I think this team could be, at the beginning of the year, the lead dog for Vegas as the team that could win it all. Yes, Lamar Jackson needs to prove he can get it done in the playoffs, but I do think this team will be right there, probably in the AFC Championship game next year. Chicago Bears. I honestly don't know about this team. It's weird because I don't think they're on the rise. I think they have a lot of questions to answer. I think Matt Nagy has questions to answer. But more specifically, I think that Mitch Trubisky has a lot of questions to answer. And if they're going to stick with Mitch Trubisky, I feel like they may be the worst team in this division. So this might be a hot take because they have a lot of talent on defense. But I'm actually going to put Chicago in the trash category. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFC just right now in my mind because they have a lot of cap tied up. I think they're going to have to lose a couple players in the offseason, and I don't really see them with a bright future given the quarterback position unless Mitch Trubisky drastically improves. The Cincinnati Bengals, I still feel like even though they're going to have a better quarterback or potentially a young, promising quarterback, I don't think this team is going to just get playoff overnight type of success. So I'm going to put Cincinnati still in that trash category. Would I be shocked if they were like a 6-10 to an 8-8 next year? No, I don't think so. I still think they have some talent. I still think they have a couple receivers that they can go to. They have Joe Mixon, who's one of the better backs in the league, and they have a couple guys on defense that are promising. William Jackson in the secondary, Carl Lawson up front, Geno Atkins is still there. I think they could drastically improve this team with a nice free agency and draft, but I don't know if it's going to happen right away, specifically in this division. The Dallas Cowboys, I think, are going to be, this is tough, I think they're going to be a playoff team next year. I don't know if I'm quite ready to say they're a contender, but man, I mean, I spoke very highly about the Cowboys before the season, during the season, and I was absolutely confuzzled about why the Cowboys were not better than they were last year, and I think all signs point to it was the coaching. It was Jason Garrett. It was not the players. They had all the talent. They ranked highly on offense. They ranked pretty highly on defense. They have the offensive line. They have the pass rushers. They have the secondary guys. They have the running back. They have the wide receiver. They have the quarterback. I really don't get it. I think they have a top 10 receiver, top 10 running back, top 10 quarterback. It's just insane. And a top 10 offensive line. Kellen Moore will be back. McCarthy will be their new head coach, and I think that is a drastic improvement over Jason Garrett. I think they need to go a slightly different direction with their defense, and hopefully they find a way to keep all their pieces intact. I think they will. I think the Cowboys are a team that we will be seeing in January, and potentially even deep into January next year. So I'm going to go playoff team for the Cowboys. For the Texans, this is tough because Deshaun Watson is an absolute animal. I think he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. I think they have an outstanding wide receiver group. I think they have a really good left tackle. You know, they made the move to get Tunsil from Miami. The running game could be better, I guess, but I think it was an improvement from last year. And the defense still has major issues. I think the defense, really, they need to add a lot of pieces and a lot of things, but they really don't have the resources. You know, they don't really have the money. They really don't have the picks because they spent them all. I think the Texans are still probably a team that should make the playoffs. When you're looking at the AFC South, they're still the team because of Deshaun Watson that should be in that conversation. I think the Titans have a better all-around roster than the Texans do, but I think that Watson just gives you that reliability that I feel like the Titans don't have at the quarterback position. So I'm going to go with Watson and the Texans in the playoffs again next year. For the Indianapolis Colts, I think they're a team that's on the rise, which is the first team on this list for me to put in that category. They're a team that I think has good foundational pieces. They have a strong offensive line. They have a really good general manager. They have a really good head coach. But I don't know if Jacoby Brissett's their quarterback. Honestly, I don't think he is. I think they need to go in a different direction. I think he's an okay guy to have, but I don't think he's going to be the guy to, unseat Deshaun Watson in this division. So, all that being said, they still need to add a lot to their defense, but they have a lot of money to do that with. They have the picks and the resources. So this is a team that maybe before the season starts I could be higher on, and maybe I could see them going to the playoffs, but I think a few things need to change before I actually can put them in that place. So Colts are on the rise. The LA Rams. Now, the LA Rams, they're a team that I don't think's on the rise. I actually think they're on the decline. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl anytime soon. Spoiler alert. I don't know if they're quite a playoff team, although I could see them making the playoffs. So I'm going to say that they're a playoff potential team. I feel like they're about the same team that they were last year, right? And now we have 6 teams, so we only have one left to put in the playoff potential category. But the LA Rams, they have Jalen Ramsey, they have Aaron Donald, they have outstanding receivers. Maybe Todd Gurley gets healthier this year and he explodes next year. They still have Sean McVay as their head coach. They got rid of Wade Phillips as their DC. They have some nice pieces on defense that they can work with. But I do feel like their offensive line needs a lot of work. They need a lot of depth on defense. Some of their players are only getting older. And I just don't think I love the way they've constructed their roster. Very top-heavy, not a great 53. Rams are a team that, would I be shocked if they're in the NFC Championship next year? No, but I just don't think I quite believe in Jared Goff or some of the pieces they have on this team. The depth specifically, I just don't see it. So I'm going to have the Rams in that playoff potential category. Especially with the division that they're in. Oh my goodness, that's tough. That's a tough division. The LA Chargers. This is very difficult because they're a team that has so much talent, but I don't think they have a quarterback. Like, they're moving on from Phillip Rivers, and I don't think Anthony Lynn is the type of head coach that could just take an average quarterback to the promised land. And they're in a division with Patrick Mahomes and a couple of teams in the Broncos and the Raiders that I think will be better. I think that, man, this is very hard. I think the Chargers are on the rise, but it's difficult because I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but I don't think they're going to be as bad. I don't know. That's hard. I'm going to put them there for now. Maybe we'll get back to them in a little bit. It really heavily depends on who they get at quarterback. But let's put them on the rise right now because I don't think they're quite in the trash because they're too talented, but they just don't have the quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs, yeah, duh. They have Patrick Mahomes. They just won the Super Bowl. They still have basically their whole foundation will be back next year. And as you saw with this team, they don't even need to be perfect to win these games. They can come back. They're just an explosive offense. They'll have all those pieces back. They still have Andy Reid, one of the best coaches in the game. So, yeah, the Chiefs, they're going to be right back, probably in the AFC Championship game, maybe even the Super Bowl next year. So the Chiefs, contender. New Orleans Saints. Wow. Ooh, this is tough. I think they're a contender, but I don't know. The Drew Brees, I think, is going to be back. I think Drew Brees is still good. I think their offense is talented. They have Michael Thomas and Kamara in their prime. They have Sean Payton, one of the best coaches in the game. They have a defense that I think is pretty good, but could add a couple pieces, which I don't think are too out of their grasp. Like, if they just add another corner, maybe a piece on the D-line for depth, that defense could be better. And they could add another receiver. So I think the Saints are honestly not too far away from being like in the Super Bowl, but I could also see them at the same time falling completely out of the playoffs. It really depends on Drew Brees, depends on how he plays next year, it depends on some of these older players, but I think the Saints are pretty steady, and I just believe in Sean Payton too much to not put them in this category, so I'm going to have them there. The Giants, I'm going to say they're on the rise. The Giants, I think, impress me with some relatively limited talent. Now, I don't like their general manager, but besides that, I think, the coach is an improvement in Joe Judge. I like their quarterback in Daniel Jones for the future. I think he showed a lot of promise in his rookie season. They have Saquon, who's a stud. They have some pieces at tight end, Evan Ingram, receiver Sterling Shepard. Defensively, they could use a lot of work, but they have some younger players that I do like. So I could see the Giants winning like 6 to 8 games next year. I don't think they're going to be quite a playoff team depending on who they sign and who they draft. But I do think they'll be a team that's competitive and fun to watch in 2020. The Philadelphia Eagles, I think they're a playoff team. I think the Eagles, again, 3 years in a row that I've been very high on the Eagles. And I feel like the Eagles, they should be a playoff team. Doug Peterson is too good of a coach. They still have Jim Schwartz as DC. Carson Wentz is a stud as long as he stays healthy. They have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, an awesome tight end duo. They have an offensive line. They have a defensive line. They have Fletcher Cox. But they are getting a little bit older. I do think Howie Roseman needs to make some moves to get this team to be younger. They still need to improve their secondary, but this team on paper is still one of the more talented ones in the NFC, and they still have that stud at quarterback, so they're a playoff team in my opinion. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Is Big Ben going to be fully back? Is he going to be Big Ben of old? Is he going to be something different? This defense should be phenomenal next year with all the pieces they have back. Mike Tomlin's a solid coach, but I don't really think he's like elite. Their offense could use a receiver, or potentially a tight end or a running back, just playmakers in general. I think the Steelers right now, if they have Ben at 100%, they're definitely a playoff team. But if they don't have Ben, they could be as far down as trash. Like, it really depends on the quarterback play for this team. But I do think the Steelers have a lot of pieces on defense, and they should be one of the 3 best defenses next year, which they were this year. So all that, Steelers are in that playoffs for me at this moment in time, assuming that Big Ben's going to be there. Denver Broncos are a team that I have on the rise. They're a team that I could see very much improving next year. I could see them going to the playoffs next year. Drew Lock, I liked what I saw from him in limited action. Their defense is not too far away from being elite with Vic Fangio as their coach, but I don't know if Vic Fangio is quite that guy as an all-around coach to take them there. They lost a lot of games, very close one-score games. They have Cortland Sutton, Phillip Lindsay. They have some studs offensively that are young. Their offensive line should improve. So I like a lot of what the Broncos bring on the table from a young, realistic roster perspective, just moving forward into the future. But I also think there's still a lot of questions, and I want to see them improve in the offseason. The Green Bay Packers, I think they are a playoff team. The Green Bay Packers, I don't know if they're quite contender status, but they're definitely a playoff team. They're a team that I think is still very young. I think people are looking at them like they're going to not be as good next year. Maybe they're not 13-3, but I actually think that they're going to improve as a team. I think their record may decline because I think they were very lucky and fortunate because of the schedule they had this year. But I think that they are a team on defense specifically that's young, that's improving. I think that will only get better. They have a very good pass rush. They have a secondary that's going to improve. Like I said, Darnell Savage, Alexander, they have these guys in place. Offensively, they have Jones and Adams. It's all about adding secondary pieces that can help Aaron Rodgers, and I think they can do that with not a lot of cap space to really do that. You know, I don't think it's going to take much to find a decent number 2 receiver that will want to play with Aaron Rodgers. Whether that's a guy like Emmanuel Sanders or somebody on that level, I think that would be an awesome add for this team. The Carolina Panthers, they're a team that I honestly have no idea. Maybe of every team on this list, they're in the I have no idea where they're going to be next year because Cam Newton, I don't know if he's coming back. They have a new coach. They lost Luke Kuechly. So a lot of fundamental change, and they're losing Greg Olsen. I think this is a team that honestly, right now, with the unknown of Cam Newton, I have to put at the bottom of the barrel. I just don't know if they're really there. I can't really, and I don't really want to say that because I like their receivers. I like their running back. I like some of their offensive line, some of their defensive line, but I still think they need to improve at linebacker. They need to improve at secondary. They need to make sure Cam comes back. If Cam's there, they're not going to be that bad. They're going to be at least average because he'll make them that. But if he's not there, they're going to be bad. There's no doubt about it. So that's kind of like a I'm going to chicken out of this pick kind of placement. Let's say if Cam is there, they have playoff potential because he's that good. But if he's not there, they're trash. Oakland Raiders, I think they're on the rise, definitely. They're a team that I could see making the playoffs next year because they have so much cap space. They are moving to Vegas, which I actually think is going to help the team because of all the resources that place is going to bring them. And I also think that Oakland is a team that they have all these draft picks. They have all this cap. They have a nice offensive line. They're only a weapon or two away on offense. They're a secondary or a pass rusher away on defense. I think they need to improve at pass rush and secondary, mostly just defense. If they could add one weapon on offense and just defense all day long, and Gruden has his hands in that offense, who he really impressed me in last season. I thought he did a great job. Jacobs is a real deal. I like Crosby. I think this team is really, really going to be a good team in like 2 to 3 years. But I think it's going to take a little bit more time, and they're on the rise for me. Washington, I think right now, if I had to say who's going to be the worst team next year in the NFL, it's the Washington Redskins. I hate them from a fundamental standpoint in terms of their ownership and how it trickles down on the entire organization. Haskins, I think, is the worst starting quarterback right now in the league. Not to say I don't like him going in the future. I think he can be okay. But they have no weapons outside of Scary Terry. Darius Guice gets hurt all the time. Adrian Peterson's only getting older. Their offensive line is, I think, declining. Their defense is, I think, declining and getting older. So, Washington, nice defensive line, but that's about it, really. They have really a lot to improve. I think they're the worst team if I had to predict next season already. The Arizona Cardinals are certainly in the on-the-rise category. They have Kyler Murray. I could see them in the playoff potential. I don't know if they're quite going to be in the playoffs next year, even if Kyler Murray's an absolute baller. Like, he showed promise this season. I think he's actually already one of the 15 best quarterbacks in football, and there's no doubt about it, in my opinion. I think he's going to be one of those 10 best quarterbacks next year. I think he's that good, but I think they still need to improve their defense a lot, and they could add a lot of weapons around him, and they could add a couple pieces on the offensive line. And I still don't know about the coach. I still don't know 100% in Cliff Kingsbury. So Cardinals are on the rise. They're kind of in that same category with all these teams like Oakland, Denver, Giants. I could see them making a big jump next year, but I don't necessarily know yet. So they're on the rise. Buffalo Bills, they're certainly a playoff team next year. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I need to move a team up to the contender category. We'll do that in a little bit. But the Buffalo Bills, to me, are certainly a playoff team. I think they're only going to improve with this offseason. I really like Josh Allen in his third year. I think he's going to only improve. Their offensive line is going to only improve. Singletary was awesome. Their receivers, I think they could add one there. Tight end Dawson Knox is going to get better. Defensively, they're going to be top 5 because they have Sean McDermott, and there's no doubt about it. They're still young. I think they could even take the place of the Patriots in the AFC East and win that division. It could happen. I don't necessarily know if it's going to happen, but it could happen. So they're definitely a playoff team next year, in my opinion. The Seattle Seahawks, they're going to be in the contender category. I actually think Seattle is going to be a team that I really like next year, and I didn't like them at all this year, even when they were good. You know, I said I don't think they're as good as they're playing. And I think a lot of it was because Russell Wilson is just a magician. He's just amazing. But they have some fundamental pieces that I really like, specifically on offense. I think they have the makings of being the best offense in the league. If they can improve some play calling, you know, with Metcalf and Lockett, they have that Chiefs capability of quick score. Carson at running back, they could add a piece on offense, but I think they really just need to improve their defense and a little bit of offensive coaching, and they'll be in the conversation to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC because of Russell Wilson and all he can do. I think the Seahawks are going to be a team that I really like, so I'm going to put them in that contender category. So, looking at the categories now, we just have 2 teams left. We have 6 on the trash category, so the trash category is taken up. The playoff potential category, we could use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 each on the playoff potential and the rise categories. And I said I'd put 7 there, so I'm going to have to move a team down to the playoff from the playoffs. And I'm going to have one more team in the contenders. So, looking at all that, I'm going to put the New York Jets on the rise. I think Darnold's going to have his best season ever in his third year. I think they're going to improve their offensive line. They went 7-9, guys, even without Sam Darnold for a good portion of the season. Their defense is going to be way better with getting C.J. Mosley there, getting Williamson back. I think they can improve their secondary. But I think the Jets could be a lot better next year. They could be a team that makes the playoffs next year. That's why I put them in the category of on the rise. I don't like Adam Gase, but I think they have the players, and I think that they have potentially the pieces on offense to be one of the 10 best offenses in the league. But I want to see them do some things in the offseason first. New England is still a contender because they're the Patriots, and I'm not going to not say, I'm assuming they have Tom Brady, so let's get that out of the way. I still think Brady is one of the 12 best quarterbacks in the league. I still think that they have a defense that's going to be in the top 5. So with those two things and the best coach in the league, they're a team that can win the Super Bowl next year, even though I don't think I'd put them at the top of the list, like usual. Their offense needs a lot of work around Brady, though. I think the offensive line is going to be good next year, assuming they get Andrews back and they re-sign Tooney. They'll have one of the best offensive lines in the league. I think missing Andrews was a lot bigger loss than we actually thought. And losing James Devlin was a massive loss as well at fullback. He's a big piece to their offense. They need a receiver. They need a tight end. Other than that, their defense is going to be elite. They have the best secondary in the game. They have the best defensive player in the league, according to the NFL voters. So Patriots will be in that conversation next year. So now I just have to decide who I'm going to move down a spot, because you can't have 13 teams in the playoffs as far as I'm concerned. Because of Big Ben, I think I'm going to move the Steelers down a category, just because of Big Ben, because I don't know if Big Ben is going to be there. Those are my rankings. Post Super Bowl 54. That's how I feel on every team. Gave you a little bit of a blurb on every team. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think I'm correct on my teams on the rise? Do you think I'm right about the teams that are at the bottom of the league? And do you think I'm right about the teams that I could see in the Super Bowl next year? Let me know in the comment section below. It's been Mitch. Thanks for watching. Peace out.